The first thing I notice is a warmth. Not a loud warmth, not the kind that announces itself. More like the warmth of sunlight through a curtain. Diffused. Everywhere at once. And attached to that warmth is something I can only describe as a quality of belonging. A sense of being held by something that isn't conditional. There's a tenderness in this energy that I don't want to pass over quickly, because I think many of you have been starving for exactly this, for something that doesn't require you to shrink yourself down in order to receive it. There is an energy present here that speaks to the quality of your inner life. The richness of it. The texture. Because here's what I'm sensing, you carry an extraordinary depth of feeling, and for a long time, maybe a very long time, you've been in spaces where that depth made other people uncomfortable. Not because there was anything wrong with it, but because depth challenges surface. Stillness challenges noise. And you, without even trying, simply by existing as you are, you held up a mirror. And some people really don't want to look in the mirror. I'm sensing a message here, something that keeps repeating in the energy like a chord being struck over and over. You did not do anything wrong. You simply became too visible. Too clear. And clarity, for someone who has been living in fog, doesn't feel like a gift. It feels like a threat. Let me describe what I'm seeing as I sit with these energies, because it's shifting in a really interesting way. There's initially something that feels like a wound. Not fresh, not bleeding, but still present in the body. The kind of wound that forms a particular kind of scar tissue. You know how sometimes scar tissue makes a part of your body more sensitive than it was before? More aware of pressure, temperature, sensation? That's what I'm picking up in the emotional layer here. A heightened sensitivity that came not in spite of what you experienced, but because of it. Someone, or a situation, and this is collective, so take what resonates, pushed you away. Called it dangerous. Called you dangerous. Maybe they used different words. Maybe they framed it as concern. Maybe they dressed it up in language that sounded reasonable on the surface, logical even. But what was actually happening was something much more primitive than reason. They were protecting themselves from the discomfort of being truly seen. Because when you show up in your authentic frequency, and I want you to hear this, when you arrive in a space as genuinely yourself, comfortable in your own quiet, grounded in your own knowing, something happens to people who are not comfortable in themselves. You destabilize them without lifting a finger. Without raising your voice. Without doing a single thing that could be pointed to and called a problem. Your peace became their problem. Your self-possession triggered their lack of it. And because they couldn't say that, because that would require a level of self-awareness they hadn't yet developed, they turned it around. Made you the difficult one. The dangerous one. The one who needed to be managed or pushed back or kept at a distance. The energy shifts as I move through this, and what I want to say next feels important to receive slowly. There's something here about the nature of ease. Not the ease that comes from avoiding difficulty, that's not what this is. This is the ease that exists on the other side of effort. The kind of ease a river has when it's found its natural course. It doesn't strain against the banks anymore. It doesn't fight its own direction. It simply moves, with an intelligence that is older than any conscious decision, carving its way through terrain not through force but through persistent, patient presence. That's the quality of energy that belongs to you. That is your natural state. And here's the layered thing I'm beginning to see more clearly now, the relationship or situation where you were pushed away. It wasn't happening in your natural state. You were performing. Maybe without realizing it. Maybe in response to their anxiety, their needs, their subtle or not so subtle cues about who you were allowed to be in that space. You had begun to dam yourself up. To hold back the current. And even then, even with all that self-containment, you were still too much for them. That tells you something. Not about your brokenness. About your magnitude. This feels significant. I want to pause here for a moment because the energy is asking me to. Think about what it means that your contained, restrained, holding back version of yourself was still the thing that challenged them most. Think about what that means for the full, unedited, unrestrained version. The one you haven't fully allowed out yet because you've spent so long in environments that weren't large enough to hold it. There's more depth here than I first sensed when I sat down with this energy. There always is with you. And I mean that genuinely. Now something interesting is coming in. Something that almost feels contradictory at first but actually isn't. There's a joyfulness in this energy. A real one. Not performed, not aspirational, actually present. And it's connected to something small. Not a grand revelation. Not a dramatic shift. Something tiny. The way light hits a glass of water. The way a certain song makes your body relax before your mind even registers what's happening. The way a conversation with the right person can make an hour feel like 5 minutes. I'm sensing that you know this feeling. That it lives in you somewhere, this capacity for simple, uncomplicated joy that doesn't require anyone else to validate it or amplify it or even witness it. It's self-generating. And for a while, perhaps in whatever relationship or situation we've been circling around, you forgot you had it. Because you were so focused on the turbulence. On the rejection. On trying to understand what happened, what went wrong, whether you could have done something differently. There's something the energy seems to want to say about that. The analysis doesn't hold the answer. The answer lives in the moment you stop explaining yourself and return to simply being yourself. Because here's what I notice about this quality of joy: it doesn't need context. It doesn't need to be earned or deserved or explained. It emerges in the present, which is the only place it ever lives, and it has been quietly waiting for you to come back to it. Not because you abandoned it on purpose, but because grief, confusion, and the aftermath of being dismissed by someone who should have cherished you, that kind of experience can pull a person so far out of the present moment that they forget the present moment was ever a source of anything good. You are being invited back. That's what I feel. Not pushed. Not pressured. Gently invited. Let me describe the color that keeps moving through this energy, because it's been present since the beginning and I want to name it. It's a soft green. The kind you see in new leaves, almost translucent, with light coming through it rather than reflecting off it. And woven through the green is this warm amber. Honey-colored. It has a quality of warmth without heat, if that makes any sense, the way amber light in late afternoon feels like rest. Together these colors feel like healing that doesn't announce itself. The kind that happens in the quiet hours. When you're doing something ordinary, eating something good, walking somewhere familiar, breathing without thinking about breathing. That's where this healing is living for many of you watching right now. Not in the dramatic confrontation or the closure conversation or the final understanding. In the ordinary moments where you accidentally forget to hurt for a little while. That forgetting is not betrayal. That forgetting is the river finding its course again. I want to speak now to something that's been hovering at the edges of this whole energy, something that feels like an undercurrent, present throughout but not yet fully named. There's a tenderness in the energy around friendship. Around the particular intimacy of being genuinely known. And what I sense is that you have, or have had, or are being moved toward, a quality of connection in your life that operates on a fundamentally different register than what happened in the situation we've been exploring. A connection where the depth isn't threatening. Where your full nature isn't just tolerated but actually sought out. Where the other person, or people, aren't destabilized by your presence. They're nourished by it. This is what real resonance feels like. And I think part of what made the other situation so disorienting is that you may have mistaken intensity for resonance. You may have mistaken the turbulence for depth, the drama for significance. At first it felt like, and I'm choosing these words carefully, at first it may have felt like the difficulty meant something was real, that the friction proved you mattered to them. But now, moving through the energy, it seems more like the friction was simply friction. Evidence not of depth but of incompatibility. Of two frequencies that couldn't harmonize, however much both parties may have wanted them to. True resonance doesn't feel like a battle. It feels like breathing. And for many of you in the collective right now, there is something in your life, already present or approaching, that feels like that kind of breathing. Effortless. Not because it's without meaning or substance, but because it fits. Because you don't have to translate yourself to be understood. Now the energy begins to show me something different. Something that requires me to be honest about what I'm sensing, because it would be incomplete to only speak to the beautiful parts. There is a place in you that still questions. Still wonders whether they were right. Whether there is something about you that is genuinely too much, too intense, too strange, too unsafe. Whether the problem was actually, quietly, you. I want to speak directly to that part. It makes complete sense that you wonder this. When someone we trust turns away from us, especially when they frame their turning as self-protection, we absorb that. Somewhere between our reasoning mind and our felt sense of self, their story about us takes up residence. It starts whispering. And the whisper doesn't feel like their voice anymore. It starts to sound like our own. But I want you to consider something. The people who are most comfortable with you, the ones who have stayed, who seek you out, who light up when they see you, what is their experience of you? Are you dangerous to them? Are you too much for them? Or are you, in those relationships, exactly what's needed? A presence that makes space feel larger rather than smaller. A frequency that helps other people find their own ground rather than lose it. I'm sensing that for many of you, the answer is the second one. Which means the narrative you absorbed isn't a truth about you. It's a truth about the particular wound of a particular person who encountered you at a particular moment in their own unhealed life. And handed you their unresolved relationship with themselves, labeled it with your name, and walked away. That is what happened. The energy is very clear about this right now. Clear in a way that feels almost luminous. There is a natural movement in the energy here. Something that doesn't feel like a forced shift, more like a season changing. The way autumn doesn't announce itself, it simply begins. The air changes. The light changes. The leaves do what they were always going to do. There's a softness coming in now. A kind of adjusting. And what this energy feels like to me is the moment after a long tension releases, not the drama of release, but the quiet aftermath of it. The moment where the body sighs without meaning to. Where something that had been braced finally stops bracing. This is available to you. And it doesn't require any grand action or decision. It doesn't require a confrontation or a conversation or even a complete understanding of everything that happened. What it requires is something much smaller, a willingness to let the present be slightly different from the past. Just slightly. Just enough to notice that you are not in that moment anymore. That the air around you right now is not the same air. That the you who is breathing in this moment has learned things, felt things, survived things, and is therefore not exactly the same as the one who first entered that situation. You have been changed by this. Not broken. Changed. There is a difference, and it matters. For those in the collective who are sitting with a specific person in mind right now, whether a romantic partner, a friend, a family member, anyone who framed their withdrawal as something they needed to do because of who you are, I want to offer something. The story they told you about yourself was assembled in urgency. In the scramble of their own discomfort, they reached for the first narrative that made the discomfort feel survivable, and that narrative involved making you the source of the problem. This is human. It is not malicious, in most cases. It is the very ordinary, very human reflex of someone who has not yet learned to sit with discomfort long enough to trace it back to its actual source. Their growth is not your responsibility. And their story about you is not your autobiography. I feel strongly about this right now. Strongly enough that I want to say it twice in different words. What they said you are is not what you are. It never was. The energy is settling now. Moving into a different register, slower, warmer, more golden in quality. Less electric. More like embers than fire. There's a sense of return. Of something being gathered back in. And what's being gathered back is not the same as what was scattered, it's been refined by the experience of being scattered. There's a clarity in it now. A knowingness that can only come from having gone through something that asked every question about you at once. You know more about yourself now. Not just abstractly. In your body. In the way you respond to spaces and people and conversations. You've developed a literacy in your own energy that you couldn't have built any other way. And that literacy, that deep, embodied knowing of what you are and what you need and what you absolutely cannot compromise anymore, is the gift. The dark, unwelcome, nobody asked for it gift of an experience that took more than it gave in the moment. But the river is flowing now. I feel it clearly. I want to close this energy, not with finality, but with grounding. There is something the cards kept offering throughout this whole reading that I want to name as a whole, as a complete thing, now that we're sitting in this quieter space together. It's the sense that you belong to yourself. More than you belong to anyone's perception of you. More than you belong to any story that was built about you in someone else's moment of pain. More than you belong to the version of yourself that believed, even briefly, that you were the dangerous one. You belong to the life that is genuinely yours. To the moments of simple, present, uncomplicated joy that rise in you without permission. To the friendships and connections where you don't have to earn your place. To the ease of simply existing in your own current, your own direction, your own beautifully particular frequency. Whatever adjustments are ahead, and there are adjustments, the energy is clear that things are not fully settled yet, that there is still movement happening. Whatever those adjustments require of you, they will not require you to become less. They will require you to finally, fully, allow yourself to be more. More present. More trusting of your own knowing. More willing to let what is easy be easy without suspecting it. More here. That's the invitation I keep feeling at the end of this energy. Just, more here. Take whatever resonated with you today. Leave what didn't. This is a collective energy, and it moves through many lives in many different forms, so trust your own discernment about what belongs to you and what doesn't. But if something landed in you today, if something in this energy made you feel seen, that recognition is real. That feeling is data. That quiet knowing that says yes, this, listen to it. It's been right about you all along.